Just a little background real quick. So I have a philosophy background, and I've been working 2 years in the Vision Institute in Pittsburgh, where I do clinical research for them. And so today I'm actually going to present not the clinical study that we did, but just a case from that study. And it's a philosophical paper that uses that case as an example. So in this paper, I examined the validity of quantitative versus phenomenological results, specifically through an examination of total scores found in 2 quality of life assessment tools and the essential themes derived from a phenomenological study questionnaire, respectively. So these differing approaches are both meant to express the quality of life for patients with low vision from eye disease. However, the meaning of the results, I argue, differ greatly due to the different methods employed. The phenomenological study employs a phenomenological method derived from Husserl's philosophy that incorporates the epoche and reduction, and therefore the results exclude claims about existence. The results are qualified or epistemically restricted to the phenomenal domain of experience. Validity, in this case, signifies something different, given that these results differ in kind from the quantitative empirical approach. In what follows, I examine these 2 forms of results and evaluate how validity signifies something different in each case. Building on the suggestion of other phenomenologists, I maintain that the term validity is misleading when used in phenomenology and should be replaced with the term truth value or phenomenological validity, according to Georgie's suggestion, to avoid confusion. So quality of life for patients with vision impairment is not easily assessed, generally speaking, especially by vision-specific quality of life health surveys like the LVQOL, which is the Low Vision Quality of Life Questionnaire, and the NEI VFQ-25, which is the National Eye Institute Visual Functioning Questionnaire, that are both commonly used in rehabilitation and research settings. So the quantification of qualitative characteristics that represent quality of life in these 2 surveys, for example, I argue conceal individual meaning and value of lived experiences of patients that are actually suffering with vision loss. The phenomenological descriptive method, however, employed in the study that I'll present today, explores quality of life without quantifying qualities, using this phenomenological approach to data interpretation that reveals the transformations of the body, perception, and intersubjective life world for patients with eye disease. So the truth value associated with the quality of life revealed in the phenomenological study, I think would otherwise have remained hidden beneath quantitative representations within a quantitative phenomenological approach. So is it possible to quantify a person's quality of life? In a recent article that compared these 2 surveys, the quality of life questionnaires, Sahil and Adil asserted that the 2 questionnaires are reliable and valid instruments, and additionally that they are actually able to quantify the quality of life of people with low vision. So I want to turn to some concrete examples from these questionnaires to explore what validity means in these contexts, and in what sense quality of life has become a quantification of these qualities. So up here we have the LVQOL questionnaire, the specific categories that are within that questionnaire. So the LVQL is developed by Wolfson and Cochran, which focuses on the difficulties that people with low vision have performing daily activities. It's generally used for rehabilitation purposes, so evaluating pre and post-treatment, for example. And this questionnaire includes 4 categories. Hopefully you can see it clear. So the first is distance vision, mobility and lighting, then adjustment, reading and fine work, and then activities of daily living. Patients are to self-report by responding using a 5-point scale, 5 representing no difficulty and 1 representing great difficulty. So what we're interested in here is the total score. The total score ranges from 0 to 125, with a higher score indicating a higher quality of life. The total score is meant to be representative of a range of activities, as you can see here on the chart, from distance to close, like crossing a road with traffic, walking outdoors on uneven pavement, reading and writing, those such things, as well as mental health impacts of vision loss, like you see in the adjustment category, like feelings of unhappiness, frustration, and being restricted due to low vision. So when testing this assessment tool, Wolfson and Cochran found that over half the sample with normal vision, so about 67%, scored above 95 total, setting the baseline for normal vision. And they concluded that this tool was shown to be able to distinguish between normal vision and low vision populations, which indicates a construct validity. So what construct validity means is how well a test measures the concept it was designed to evaluate. It has also shown to have internal consistency reliability. But I would argue that the quantity representing the total score or overall quality of life conceals the impact of specific daily activities on the life world, thereby covering up the overall experience of actually living with low vision. So this is the VFQ 25, developed by the National Eye Institute. So this is the second questionnaire, which is typically used for interviews and clinical studies. So like QI studies or quality improvement studies. This questionnaire, developed by the National Eye Institute, focuses on items related to visual function specifically. It includes 25 items in the following categories, as you can see on the chart, like global vision rating, difficulty with near vision, distance vision activities, limitations in social functioning, role limitations due to vision, dependency on others, and mental health, etc., and ocular pain. And additionally, this questionnaire also contains a single general health question, and participants are asked to rate their situation for each category, and then an average for all the categories is calculated at the end. The total score is calculated by averaging the subscale scores or each category, and it excludes the general health question. So by taking the average of the category scores rather than the individual items, equal weight is given to each category, whereas averaging the items would give weight to categories with more items. So it makes sense to do it this way. Given that the categories are given equal weight, I would argue creates the problem of intensity. So for example, the intensity of the impact of vision on mental health could far outweigh the impact of vision loss on performing activities near and far away, for example. The intensity felt among the categories would obviously differ between participants as well. So the meaning of quote unquote a little difficulty, or a little difficulty performing some specific task, represented by numerical value 2, for example, is subjective depending on your threshold for discomfort and pain, right? For your coping mechanisms, your general outlook on the world, and your support systems. This is just the same list of categories, but I'll skip over this one. It's the same as the previous. So some general remarks here about validity. How much time? 10 minutes. Okay, perfect. So while quantitative representations of qualities in quality of life surveys, like the total scores for individual categories, have shown reliability and validity for the assessment of quality of life for patients with various chronic eye diseases. But the individual meaning attached to those lived experiences is unfortunately lost beneath quantitative representation. Meaning is concealed within these numerical abstractions. Phenomenological results, essential themes discovered through the application of the phenomenological descriptive method, are said to have truth value or phenomenological validity, to borrow Georgie's phrase, as opposed to validity in this empirical sense. Phenomenological descriptions that give rise to essential themes, or what I'm calling essential qualities of the phenomenon, while they do not tell us about the existence of eye disease or the material conditions or legality claims, they, however, do disclose meanings of phenomenal lived experience, first-person perspectives of disability, and often reveal essential structures of embodiment or perception. Quality of life in phenomenology tries to account, I think, for a more holistic view of the way disease is embodied and experienced as lived disability, like in the case of eye disease, as well as the ways that these experiences vector with other areas of the life world. So let's turn to some phenomenological results. So last year, 2023, we conducted a pilot study on eye disease in collaboration with the ophthalmology faculty at the University of Pittsburgh at the UPMC Vision Institute in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the method that we used in this study involved interviewing patients with chronic central serous retinopathy, which is an eye disease that affects the retina. The questions range from topics on noticed differences to visual perception, disruption to embodied experiences and activities due to obstructions in the visual field. So for example, disruption to habitual movement, sleep patterns and hobbies, work, leisure activities, all these sorts of embodied disruptions, to the intersubjective domain as well. The influence of vision loss on social, work, and familial relationships, on living and coping with vision loss. Through this phenomenological approach, we began to uncover some of the essential characteristics of phenomena associated with vision loss experience, and as well as the structures of embodiment and perception that shape them. So, what are the meaning of results within the reduction? So we implemented a method derived from the Duquesne School of Phenomenology, the phenomenological descriptive method based on Husserl's philosophy. And up here you see the basic 5 steps for data analysis that we'll go over real briefly. So this descriptive method is typically used in phenomenological psychology, originally initiated by Amedeo Giorgi, former faculty at Duquesne University. And the elements of Husserl's method, namely the assumption of the Epochean reduction, the phenomenological attitude, free imaginative variation, and eidetic analysis, are the methodological tools that allowed us to focus on the essential features of individual phenomenal experience, with the goal of finding structural generalities across participants. So after the participants were interviewed, responses were recorded and transcribed, and we went through this 6-step process of analysis. So initial reading of the transcripts for a sense of the whole of their experience, and then we adopted the phenomenological attitude in addition to the assumption of the Epochean reduction. So for the reduction, we were essentially reducing or restricting our frame of reference to a particular region of meaning of phenomenal experience, so one specific aspect of their experience. In our case, that we'll look at in a moment, the disrupted embodied experiences associated with vision loss. And then we divided the participants' verbatim words into meaning units. So as the topic changed when they spoke freely about the topic, we indicated that that was a change in meaning unit. And then we basically translated these meaning units into psychological meaning. And the last 2 steps is where we compose a situated structure for the individual participants. So this is essentially a summary of the essential themes of that individual's experience. And free imaginative variation is what we use to verify whether a theme was essential or accidental. And in the final step 6, we compose a general structure across participants. So it's essentially a summary of the synthesis of all the essential themes that appeared across participants. So a phenomenological approach to thematic analysis was used to derive the essential themes based on the individual structural description, so step 5. And the eidetic reduction was then carried out in addition to the phenomenological reduction for thematic analysis in order to focus on basically the limits or boundaries of individual features of the phenomenon. So we'll explore one of these essential features in the case study below, where the eidetic reduction takes place within the phenomenological reduction so that any existence positings are suspended. So the account that follows, or actually the analysis of the account that follows, is reduced to its essential theme. Okay, so let's look at a case study. So this is from an interview with CJ. So during the interview, we determined that the essential theme of spatial non-awareness emerged as he discussed his experience living with chronic central serous retinopathy, or CSCR for short. So CJ experienced a peculiar lack of awareness on the border of his body, extending from the left side of his face out to about arm's length distance, maybe about this far. So Husserl's notion of originary constitution derived from Eidos 2 is what we use for analysis of CJ's case, specifically with respect to the relationship between vision and touch in the way that he was constituting the borders of his own body. So briefly, for Husserl, the tactile is ontologically privileged over the visual for originary bodily constitution, because tactility is the precondition for the existence of all sensation for Husserl. So accordingly, with sight alone, it would not be enough to actually constitute the body in an originary sense. Husserl writes in Eidos 2, a subject whose sense was only the sense of vision could not at all have an appearing body, end quote. So in Husserl's thought experiment here, a person lacking tactile sensation couldn't properly constitute his body in an originary sense, although the body could potentially still be constituted as an object among other subjects, but not in that originary way, as being my body. It may appear as an object like any other object, but it would not appear as the body connected specifically to my sensations. It would lack that sense of ownership. So during the interview, CJ reported a strange feeling of absence on the left side of his body. So here we have this quote that I have on the screen. So CJ says, the feeling I have out around here, around my head on the left side, on the right side is really good. This side, the left side, seems like my awareness only goes about this far, and he extends his hand about 6 inches from his face. To where this side, the right, it's like a presence. I can feel this presence on the right, the side of my good eye, the right side. And he continues, it's hard to describe, but I feel it a lot. It's like this side of my head, the left, is dead, and the right side is alive. It's like a body awareness, he says, almost like an energy. I can feel energy out here on the right. I can't feel anything on the left. And it's coming from the left eye. I don't have vision there, so my brain isn't comprehending as much as over here on the right. And then he continues. Well, this is where I interject, and as the researcher, I ask him, and do you find that if, let's say you use your sense of touch on your left side, do you think that that would extend the bodily awareness a little further, or does that not affect it? And I ask him, try to extend your left arm up away from your body to see what happens. And he says, yes, it does. Yeah, okay, so I feel that non-awareness on the left side. I'm looking at the corner. I have this tripod. I'm looking at the tripod and I can feel that non-awareness happening. It's almost like a blurry perception. Even though I can see it, it's still a blurry perception that I'm feeling. But if I touch it with my left hand, so he reaches out and he touches the tripod, the perception of absence goes away because I have that tactileness of my finger closing up the distance, I guess, making that space aware, comprehensible, I guess. It's a brain thing, you know? The perception of absence goes away. So I think CJ's experience of non-awareness also affected his, the intersubjective domain, which came up later in the interview. So he opened up about how eye disease alongside age, he was 65 years old, and alongside going through COVID, that whole situation, and a natural predisposition to not being extroverted rendered socialization less frequent. And because CSCR, he also feels less confident in dealing with others and navigating his environment. Despite the impact of illness on socialization, it did not strongly affect his desire to continue moving his body or doing physical activity. But there was ultimately a shift in priorities for CJ. CSCR receded CJ's sociality and thus minimized his possibilities of interactions with others. The internalization of visual impairment accentuated his uncertainties about social ability. Our phenomenological analysis of CJ's descriptions provided insight into CJ's quality of life, extending from perceptual experience to intersubjectivity, providing insight whose truth value is bound to the phenomenal field of experience. So now I want to think about the difference between validity and truth value based on this case that we looked at. So as a phenomenological study grounded in Husserl's method, we are essentially operating within the reduction and within the eidetic reduction as well when analyzing this individual essential feature. So any conclusions drawn within the phenomenological reduction involve the existence positing, so the exclusion of the existence of the world. Hence, we lose validity in the empirical sense, insofar as we are not making claims about factually existent things. So I would say the reduction gives negative data in a sense, negative in the natural attitude, but positive in the phenomenological attitude. So in contrast, in empirical research, claims are about factually existent things, right? Reality claims. The results are positive in the natural attitude, but negative in the phenomenological sense, given that empiricism does not explain the phenomenal realm. Hence the need for a separate science, right? Hence the need for phenomenology. So ultimately, I would say we are working with parallel epistemologies in empirical science versus phenomenology. So conclusions that describe the same object, right? But on parallel, never touching fields. So phenomenological science, I think, may be considered a science of verification. It contains a certain sense of truth value with the caveat that epistemological claims within reduction are limited. There are claims about essences, eidetic intuitions, and appearances, but not matters of fact. So perhaps a phenomenological qualitative approach may have deemed this essential characteristic of vision filling in, as it were, for spatial awareness, for constitution in CJ's case as an outlier, because none of the other participants from the study experienced this phenomenon, nor did they emphasize the impact of vision loss on body constitution. So certain forms of statistical analysis in quantitative approaches may dismiss the significance of this aspect of CJ's experience, even though it did have profound impact on CJ's actual quality of life, especially on the intersubjective social aspects of his life, creating antisocial behavior. In a phenomenological study, we rely on different logic than inductive reasoning. Bless you. Phenomenology recognizes that a single example could reveal something essential about a phenomena. And in CJ's case, it revealed an essential feature of the structure of embodiment and perception. That is, the deep reliance of vision and touch for bodily constitution and for the constitution of objects in general. So these kinds of essential features of phenomena we've coined as meaningful outliers, as they are deemed essential qualities or essential themes of the phenomenon, even though they did not emerge across patients. So in conclusion, just kind of thinking about future directions for our project and our work. We plan on doing a follow-up study that will involve a larger sample size. This was just a pilot study. It involved 5 participants that we interviewed. So we're thinking to do a larger sample size between 80 and 100 participants. And the questions would focus just solely on one essential theme to make it more narrow. So perhaps we could expand on this theme of vision and touch, or vision and tactility, and how that affects bodily constitution. We also want to extend it across different eye diseases as well, instead of focusing on a specific eye disease, just to see how vision functions in other conditions. But ultimately, I'm not sure if quantifying these kinds of phenomenological results in a large-scale study would be the right direction, in the sense that we might lose what is unique about phenomenological research, or what I was talking about earlier, the truth value or phenomenological validity. We would lose individual meaning. And so my ultimate question, I guess, to the audience here would be just for some general feedback about how we could exactly present phenomenological data in terms of essential themes in a larger scale study without quantification.